So today we have a word problem, and it states, Miss Terry's third grade class is going on a field trip. In order for all 17 students to go, they each need to bring $25. How much money is needed to take all 17 students on the class trip? Okay, so what we need to do first is highlight our important information. First, I see 17 students and the word each. This is telling us to multiply, and we will multiply 17 by 25 because each student, or every student, needs to bring $25. So our first step in solving this problem is to write our standard equation. It will look something like this. 25 times 17. Now, it doesn't matter which number is on top or bottom as long as your place values line up. So our ones place values are going to be in line and our tens place values are going to be in line. This really means we are multiplying 20 plus 5 by 10 plus 7. 20 and 5 is going to give us 25, and 10 and 7 is going to give us 17. We can represent this multiplication problem in a more visual way by using an area model. So this area model shows us what 25 times 17 would look like. And like we did before, we are going to break this down by parts. Our tens place, and then add our ones place. So 20 plus 5 is going to give us 25, and 10 plus 7 is going to give us 17. Here is where we can start doing our simple multiplication steps. In this box, we can see that 20 and 10 are lined up. So we will only consider 20 times 10 and what that can give us. In this box, we see 20 and 7 now line up. So we only are going to consider 20 times 7 and what that will give us. In our box over here, we have 5 times 10. And that's all we will consider to find this area. And lastly, our smaller box is going to be 7 times 5. So now we have broken this down into simpler multiplication steps. Now we will solve these simpler multiplication steps. 20 times 10 is going to give us 200. 20 times 7 is going to give us 140. 10 times 5 is going to give us 50. And 7 times 5 is going to give us 35. Wow, that's interesting. I had a ones place digit times a ones place digit, but I ended up getting a digit that has both a tens place and a ones place. Let's try to visualize that through base 10 blocks to see how that happened.
Okay, so our first simple multiplication problem is 20 times 10. This is just another way to say 10 groups of 20. So I can represent this by using our long, which is made up of 10 units. So to represent our 20, I am going to use 2 longs. And I'm going to continue placing my groups until I have 10 groups of 20. So as a general rule, we can only have 9 longs in our tens place value because 9 longs is equal to 90. So once we hit 10 longs, this is going to bump us up to our hundreds, or something that would be in our hundreds place. So we're going to have to regroup and use our flat to create 100. So first I'm going to take my first 10 longs to create my hundreds block. Once I create this, I can swap it out for my flat. Now we still have some more that we can regroup with, so we're going to do it a second time. And this we can also swap for a block. Our next simple multiplication problem is 20 times 7, which again is another way to say 7 groups of 20. So as I stated before, we are going to take our 2 longs as our first group and continue until we have our 7 groups of 20. So now clearly we do have more than 9, so we're going to have to regroup again. So we're going to do the same thing and place them on our flat until we have 10 longs. Okay, so now for this, now we can swap or regroup into the hundreds place. And here we don't have enough to regroup, so those are going to stay in our tens place value. So now we can see that we have 100 and 20, 40. Our third simple multiplication problem is 10 times 5, which is 5 groups of 10. So here, like we said before, 1 long represents 10 units. So we're going to put 5 longs. 3, 4, 5. And now we don't have enough to regroup, so we are going to keep our 5 groups of 10 in our tens place value to equal 50. Now we have 7 times 5, or 7 groups of 5. So now we're dealing with our ones place because each digit is only 1 digit. So I'm going to take my first group of 5 and put it under the ones place value and continue until I have 7 groups of 5. So as we said before, 1 long is equal to 10 units. So here, clearly we see that we can regroup. So we're going to do the same that we did for our tens regrouping. So now we can swap for a long. To speed up our process, we know 5 and 5 is 10, so we know that 2 groups will equal a long. And here we have another 2 groups that we can regroup into a long. So now we see that we have 10, 20, 30, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to give us our 35. So now that we have broken down our problem with the area model and gone over regrouping with our base 10 blocks, now we can return to our standard method of solving this equation.
Okay, to solve our standard equation for multiplication, we can recall our information we used before. So first we see our ones place, 5 and 7, and we are going to multiply it. So I'm going to circle that to show that we are multiplying these first. So as we recall from our base 10 block, we know that 5 times 7 is going to give us 5 units and 3 longs. Now we can't write our 3 here because we might get more, so we are going to carry it up into our tens place. Now we're going to look at our 20 times 7, so I'm going to circle that here. So it may look like we're saying 2 times 7, but we have to remember this 2 represents 2 longs because we are in our tens column. So this actually means 20 times 7. Now when we multiply 2 times 7, we get 14, but we're again multiplying by 20 because of our secret 0. So our answer is actually going to be 140. But we have to add our 3 tens, or 3 longs that we regrouped in our first step. So our answer will actually come out to 170. I will place my 1 under the 100, my 7 under the tens, and since I have no more ones to add, I will just leave that 5 there. Our next step, now that we have finished with our 7, multiplying all the numbers in our first row, we can move over to our 1. Now this 1 represents 1 long, or 10 units. So we can say 10 times 5 will give us 50. We will find our tens column, put in our 5, and then our ones column will have a 0. So we have 50 units. In our next step, we will multiply our 2 by our 1. This is still representing our longs, so we will have 10 times 2 longs, or 20, to give us 200. We will put our 2 in the hundreds place, and we have no tens and no ones to add, so we can stop there. And now all we have to do is add up our numbers. 5 ones and 0 ones gives us 5. 7 tens and 5 tens is going to give us 12. So we will put our 2 down and we'll carry our 1. And now 2 hundreds, 100, and 1 extra 100 is going to give us 4 total hundreds. So this says that we have 425, or we need $425 to take our students on the trip.